Hey, what's happening? This is Confused with the Guy01, and welcome to this week's Versus episode on the Walkthrough channel. This week, it's Cody Rhodes against The Rock, and if you guys saw last week's episode, or you've been following WWE at all in the past 2 weeks, you'll know exactly why. And I think this is now the third week in a row where the match we're doing isn't in between anyone who's had a birthday the past week, but instead having to do with current storylines going on. There were 2 birthdays this past week, and I'll get to those. It was Big Show, aka Paul White's birthday, February 8th, he turned 52, and yesterday, February 9th, was Jim the Anvil Neidhart's birthday. He would have turned 69. So as I mentioned in the walkthrough video that I released just before this, once again, we got a lot of stuff to talk about this week. If you guys didn't see last week's episode where we left off, we were covering the closing segment of that week's SmackDown, in which Cody Rhodes came out to confront Roman Reigns and confirm that he will be challenging Roman Reigns for the world title, but he won't be doing it at WrestleMania, and instead handed his WrestleMania main event to The Rock, who then came out and stared down Roman Reigns. And that's where we left it last week. Now, since then, that segment has broken that segment completely broke the internet, and I didn't realize just quite how crazy it drove people in that moment, because it literally just happened when we talked about it. Like, it just happened a few hours ago. Since then, that video has broken the record for the most disliked video on WWE's official YouTube channel, surpassing the segment in which Charlotte Flair was randomly added to the main event of WrestleMania 35 for no reason. Way to go. Breaking records, guys. Way to go. Now, since then, stuff has since come out about that segment and the behind-the-scenes story behind it. And the big thing that's come out this past week that came out almost right away was that it was entirely The Rock's idea. Not just the segment itself, but also him replacing Cody in the main event of WrestleMania. That was all The Rock's idea, and it was a very late idea. From what we understand, it was like a day or 2 notice, most likely happening after that week's Raw, which is why it just seemed to happen out of nowhere. And in addition to that, not only was The Rock the one who presented this idea of him, being the one to wrestle Reigns at Mania instead of Cody, not only did he present that idea, but he also was apparently pushing for him to beat Reigns at Mania. Now, this raises the question, would that have been for the title, or were they going to have Reigns drop the title to Cody whenever he did challenge him for the title, which, we could assume would have been at Elimination Chamber, but I don't know. And if it was going to be at Elimination Chamber, yeah, Reigns wasn't going to drop the title there. It was only ever going to happen at WrestleMania, so we can assume The Rock would have beaten Roman Reigns for the title. And that, in addition, that was another thing that just set fans off. Now, I wanted to bring this up before we started getting into Raw and SmackDown, because this kind of set the stage for WWE's programming for the following week. Basically, as soon as it came out that that video had become, WWE's most disliked video, a report came out saying that WWE is looking at the feedback that segment's gotten, and just the idea of The Rock versus Reigns at WrestleMania, which for a moment there was made official. Like, I think they even made a poster and everything for Reigns versus The Rock. So keep that in mind as we go through Raw and SmackDown. And we actually have another thing to talk about before we get to SmackDown, but we'll get to that when we get to it. So beginning to Raw, Seth Rollins called out Cody Rhodes, again saying, hey, since you gave your spot to The Rock, why not just face me? Keep your, Mania main event spot, but just have it with me. This then brought out Drew McIntyre, who insisted on Cody challenging Reigns, despite, you know, Cody giving his spot up to The Rock a few days earlier. And suggesting that he be the one to fight Seth Rollins. And another thing I forgot to mention was apparently The Rock's reasoning for, you know, him pushing this match between him and Reigns at Mania was, in his words, to save WrestleMania. Basically saying that WrestleMania was on the verge of falling apart, and he did this to save it, to keep people interested. And to be fair, there was a moment there where it was like everything seemed to be falling apart, with, you know, Seth Rollins getting injured, CM Punk getting injured, you know. That was a huge match that just fell apart right away. But the one match Mania match that did not need fixing, and the one match that people, you know, the one match that was already basically guaranteed to sell tickets was Cody versus Reigns. That was the one match that did not need to be fixed. That was the one thing that had been going perfectly right. So I don't get this reasoning of him saying he did it to save WrestleMania. I mean, yes, The Rock being involved is going to bring a lot of eyes to it. A lot of mainstream eyes that, you know, probably wouldn't have been there normally. But, you know, the eyes that already are on it don't really want to see The Rock in that spot. At least not this year. And not that spot, not that match. So, again, I just don't really get the reasoning behind it. Anyway, moving on with Raw. Hashtag DIY beat the New Day, the Creed Brothers, and Imperium. This allowed them to move on to a number 1 contenders match on SmackDown. Becky Lynch beat Shayna Baszler to qualify for the Elimination Chamber. And with that, it begins the series of matches to qualify for the Elimination Chamber. That's going to take up the next couple weeks. Actually, I think they get about half of them already done this week. They'll probably get the other half done next week, I think. Adam Pearce then came out to confirm Rhea Ripley versus Nia Jax at Elimination Chamber for the World Women's title. Afterwards, Nia Jax then took out Rhea Ripley. Ivar and Valhalla beat Akira Tozawa and Maxine Dupree. The Miz beat JD McDonough after some accidental interference by R-Truth. Jey Uso confronted Gunther during his 600-day Intercontinental Championship reign celebration. The confrontation then turned physical, with Jey sending Gunther to the outside of the ring. Now, people are already saying, hey, this could be, you know, the match at WrestleMania. Jey Uso versus Gunther for the Intercontinental title. And you know what? I think a lot of people would be behind that. Have Jey Uso be the one to break this, you know, record-setting reign. I mean, he's already established himself as a main event guy. I don't think anyone would be upset if he was the one to, you know, end the reign. But on the other hand, I would have really liked to see Chad Gable, you know, win the Intercontinental Championship. I mean, the matches he's had with Gunther these past few months, or, you know, a few months ago, those were really good matches. And again, he's another guy who I don't think anyone would be upset if he was the one to end the reign. And I think it'd be an amazing match. I think it might be a better match if it was Gable than if it was Jey. No offense to Jey, but I mean, Gable and Gunther, they just tear the house down every time. And, you know, give them a 25-30 minute match at WrestleMania, or make it an Iron Man match. I saw that as a suggestion on like a YouTube video once. Like, have Gunther versus Chad Gable in an Iron Man match for the Intercontinental title. That's a 5-star match right there. It'd be amazing. But we'll see. This could just end up leading to Elimination Chamber with Gunther defending the title there. And then, you know, someone else in Mania, but again, we'll see. Asuka and Kairi Sane beat Kayden Carter and Katana Chance. And in the main event, Cody Rhodes beat Shinsuke Nakamura in a bull rope match before Drew McIntyre came out and attacked Cody. Now, before we get into SmackDown, I want to talk about something that happened earlier in the week, because it really sets the stage for SmackDown. So, WWE held their WrestleMania kickoff show on Thursday, which was just like this big press conference event, which I don't get why they held it then, when WrestleMania is still like a good month or two away. I don't know why they held a kickoff show 2 months in advance. But the big thing that came from that, and the thing that everyone's talking about, is that Roman Reigns and, The Rock were having their stare down to, build hype for their Mania match, when all of a sudden Cody Rhodes comes out and basically says, you know what, no, you're not getting this main event spot. This is my main event. I'm challenging Roman Reigns for WrestleMania. I'm going to be in the main event. This then led to The Rock basically siding with Roman Reigns, because Cody started bringing up stuff about Roman Reigns' family, the bloodline, all that, his heritage, and The Rock took offense to that, because as he says, when you talk about, the bloodline, that's his bloodline. That's his blood. And in response, slapped Cody Rhodes before walking out with Roman Reigns. Now, this almost led to a big brawl involving Seth Rollins, who was also on stage at the moment, and you had Triple H, Adam Pearce, and Nick Aldis having to hold everyone back. And now you've got heel Rock back, and it's at this point where you wonder, was this whole thing a work, or did they just improvise this just based off the reaction? Because either way, if it's a work, they got everyone. I mean, you had fans more upset with the company than they've been probably since, Batista coming back and winning the Royal Rumble, and, taking Daniel Bryan out of the main event scene. I mean, this was serious heat against the company and The Rock. So if this was planned, and, they planned to do this thing where, The Rock ends up siding with Roman Reigns, and now you've got Cody versus The Rock and Reigns, this was an amazing swerve. Or you gotta give credit for the company for realizing they made a mistake and owning up to it, and now benefiting from it. I mean, The Rock slapping Cody Rhodes and now siding with Roman Reigns, that's got everyone's attention now. So, people are still, now the question is, was this whole thing a work from the beginning? Because even Cody Rhodes on Twitter said, basically, in response to all the backlash, it's like, trust me. He literally just said on Twitter, trust me. So that had people thinking, okay, maybe there's a storyline here. Maybe this isn't what it all looks like. And you know what? Gotta give him credit. Again, if it was a plan from the beginning or scripted, or not planned, that's not what I meant. If it was planned from the beginning, or they just made it, they realized their mistake right away and are fixing it, they fixed it. Because after that press conference, Triple H did then confirm that the main event of Mania will be Cody versus Reigns. It will no longer be The Rock versus Reigns. Now, this then led to SmackDown, where Triple H opened up the show and announced that, and confirmed that Cody and Reigns for the world title is the main event of WrestleMania. Nick Aldis and Adam Pearce then said that the Seth Rollins opponent for Mania will be decided by whoever wins the Elimination Chamber. That's going to decide who his who his challenger is going to be. So now, Elimination Chamber isn't for the title, it's for the #1 contendership. Which puts a lot more, a lot more on the line there. So, Drew McIntyre beat AJ Styles to qualify for the Elimination Chamber. I need to see my other moves. Cody Cutter, Roto Breaker. Okay. So, how do I do this? Here we go. Nope, that's not what I meant to do. Oh well. Bianca Belair beat Mia Yim to qualify for the Women's Elimination Chamber. Bayley called out Dakota Kai, basically saying we're asking her where she stands after, you know, Damage Control turned on Bayley, as Dakota Kai was absent last week. Dakota Kai insisted that she was with Bayley, and then when the rest of Damage Control came out, Dakota Kai grabbed a chair, and it looked for a moment like she was going to hit Bayley, but instead she used the chair to fend off the other members of Damage Control. So it does look like Dakota Kai is siding with Bayley, which I think is a good call to make because everyone just loves Dakota Kai. She just has that likable, lovable personality. But we'll have to see. This could just be leading up to a swerve. Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne beat #DIY to get a shot at the Undisputed titles at Elimination Chamber. And in the main event, Randy Orton beat Sami Zayn to qualify for the Elimination Chamber, and afterwards Drew McIntyre attacked Randy Orton to close out the show. So already for the Men's Elimination Chamber, we've got, let's see, we've got Drew McIntyre, and Randy Orton. So those are two big names already, and LA Knight is also in the running to be a potential member of the Elimination Chamber. So we've got a few names floating around there of people who can challenge Seth. And that's it for Raw and SmackDown. Like I said, there's a lot of discussion going on right now. I mean, WWE went from suffering from some of the biggest backlash they've gotten as a company in years with, you know, swapping out Cody for The Rock at WrestleMania, and the fact that it came out that it was The Rock's idea, that turned everyone against The Rock. Like, bad. Like, the worst of it is when his daughter started getting threatening messages, and it's like, come on, that's when it's like, this is pro wrestling, guys. Yes, it's upsetting, this isn't the story we want, this isn't the match we want, but you don't bring people's real lives into this. You don't cross that line. And I think WWE realized once that kind of started happening, they're like, okay, we made a big mistake from a creative standpoint. When people's families are being threatened, that's when you know you're like, okay, maybe we shouldn't have made this decision. Even if that's the line that should never have been crossed, no matter what decision they made. And now, you know, you've got The Rock basically turning heel, which I didn't think they could be done at this point. Somehow, The Rock made himself the biggest heel in the company in a week. Kudos to him for pulling that off. I mean, despite, after being, you know, a respected legend for the last 20 years, he's now the biggest heel in wrestling. And he did this all in the span of a week. Good job, I guess. But yeah, so what do you guys think of just everything that's happened this last week? The Rock basically taking it from Cody, forcing WWE's creative hand, because he's able to do that now as he's a member of the TKO board. I mean, he's a high-ranking executive in the company now, so he can pull these strings now. And then on the other side, we think of the company kind of pushing back against The Rock and being like, no, we made a mistake here, we're going to correct it, Cody's back in. So leave those thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. I'm Nick Fuzz at the time. Stay tuned for next week's Versus, and next week where we continue our LEGO Batman 3 walkthrough. Hope you guys enjoyed. Guy01 in the American Dream, or American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, signed out. I'm so tired. Bye, guys.